A year of age, you would expect a kid to say how many words?
Well, by a year of age, children should be having their first few words. When you say language, it's not always necessarily words.
Well, sound.
For example, well, not only that. For example, pointing is really, one of the first language that we see that in children. Children will point for what they want even before they're able to say words.
So we call that expressive language at the
Sure, that would be a part of expressive language. And even babbling and cooing is, the first starting of expressive language. And as using the hands is easier than controlling all the muscles in the mouth that it takes to say certain sounds and words, you can see children using their hands and gesturing as expressive language even before using their words.
If a kid at 4 months of age wasn't making eye contact, would there be a little bit of concern?
Sure. It's definitely by 4 months of age, they should be, at least with their mother, with their people that they're used to, should be making eye contact with them, they should be following, especially something that's of interest to them.
What about a social smile? If the kid has no social smile, is that a little bit of a concern?
Sure, that would be concerning.
But where would you expect a social smile that it should be there in most babies?
It's early on. I mean, they really start smiling from 1 to 2 months of age. They'll really start responding to their mother and being consoled by their mother.
So in other words, if the kid's, say, 15 to 18 months and it's really not expressively, by pointing gyration or with words, that's sort of like another big red flag sometimes.
Yeah, that's definitely a red flag. And there's all sorts of disorders that are associated with expressive language disorders. By expressive, we mean where they're saying that as opposed to receptive, where they're understanding language. It varies.
Okay, but of course, if you didn't think the kid was speaking, you'd always make sure the kid had a hearing test.
It's always the first thing to do. There is the newborn hearing screen that's done when they're first born, but of course that's not very accurate. That's helpful, but if the child's not speaking, it's one of the first things you would do is check their hearing, because that's something that could be taken care of.
Okay, and there are ways of doing it that are reasonably accurate as a kid gets older.
Sure.
But they should not just be done by anybody. It should be someone who's especially trained in doing that with children.
Yes, of course.
Because some of it's based on observations too, isn't it?
Right. I mean, some parents, will come in and say, "Oh, of course, my child hears. I can tell that they hear." But that, hearing is very specific, and there's different frequencies that some babies can hear at, and different frequencies that human language is functioning at, and therefore all those frequencies need to be tested properly.
So the kid doesn't have a social smile and doesn't speak. People are really worried about a term today, and that word is called autism.
Right.
Now, we don't like to put that diagnosis in a kid in a young age, but you think about it a little bit, a kid that doesn't have a social smile and doesn't speak. But we don't say the kid is, just we have concerns.
Right, it's early on to make the diagnosis. However, if you start seeing that they don't have language and they don't have sociability and they're not interacting properly, it's something that you definitely want to keep in the back of your mind so that you can keep following the kid closely so that you can diagnose it as early as possible. Because the sooner you diagnose the problem, the sooner you can start treating it properly.
And there's a term we use, language delay, which is not autism. Some kids just speak later.
Right.
Okay, and they're perfectly okay down
And a lot of that is hereditary and genetic. And sometimes if you look into the family, into the mother's family, the father's family, you can find that there are other learning disabilities or language disabilities as well.
Now, if the kid is 2 years old, no expressive language, virtually no eye contact with mother and father, would you have a greater concern the kid could possibly have this we're hearing in the news all the time, autism? Is that a possibility?
Sure, it is possible, and it's something we will look at. And we will look at all his social interactions. We will look at the way he plays, the way he interacts with his environment in general.
What would make you be very suspicious? Or anything else that you would look at and say, maybe this kid is doing something that, no, this is it? What would be the last thing?
Sure, so other things that children with autism do is some of them have stereotypies, which are just repetitive movements such as hand flapping, or some children will be spinning on themselves or banging. Others like doing repetitive behaviors such as flicking light switches, opening and closing doors, cabinets, spinning on themselves. And a lot of them will prefer to be alone, not necessarily prefer to be with other children or interacting with other people. And they don't play with their toys in the normal manner that children play with their toys. For example, with imaginative play, where children will take two cars and roll them and crash them and make traffic jams and things like that, children with autism may just line them up or stack them or bang them on their head or something like that.
But even some of these kids with all these things, when they're 5 years old, we don't know why. Some of them end up being okay too. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, autism is a spectrum. That's, it's called autistic spectrum disorder. And one of the reasons for that is there is a very wide spectrum. Where some children have some of these features and can do very well, while others have more of the features and have more difficulty with social interaction and with language. And actually, one of the biggest predictors of how well they will do as adults is really their social interactions, because that's one of the most important things in society today.